going to start. Good morning. It is 10 a.m. and we're going to call this meeting to order. All three of the districts are represented. The notice of the meeting was properly posted on March 10th, 2023. We'll move to the minutes. Number 1, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the minutes of February 14th, 2023.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, motion passes. Number 2, on departmental items, discussion and possible action regarding, sorry, do I need to hit vote? Yes. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, number 2, discussion and possible action regarding selection of March 2023 BOCC Employees of the Month, requested by Karen Kent.
Thank you, ma'am. Is that right?
Karen, do we pick 2
Yes.
or 1?
Two. And we don't name them. We option A, B, and C them.
Okay.
So there's be a little bit of a surprise.
Okay. Would you like to nominate?
Sure. I think all three candidates are worthy, but I will make a motion that we select option A and option B.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, KK.
Okay, we are going to move to number 7 on the agenda. Which is also Karen Kent. So, discussion and possible action regarding reinstatement of the Oklahoma County Safety Committee.
We have had a safety committee for years under the HR safety department. And during COVID, it disbanded. Just people were too afraid to meet because of the COVID. And so it was kind of, we just quit. And it's time for us to get back into safety and make safety part of our culture with our employees at Oklahoma County. So what we're wanting to do, we want to reestablish the safety committee. We have representatives from not all the BOCC departments, but from the yards. We have representative from Treasurer's Resale, the sheriff, juvenile. And what we do is we meet, they go over statistics. We talk about what this department may be doing for safety, what this may be doing for safety. There's no definite decisions made about anything. It's just safety people talking safety and trying to get our employees home safely at night. So I kind of wanted to bring it to the public. We haven't had a whole lot of response on who's going to be representing. So I thought maybe this would kind of kick the reminder that we need to get that done.
Yeah, I will say when we had this in the past, it was something that a lot of the guys at the yard wanted to be on. They really enjoyed it, and there was more discussion. Not that we're not being safe now, but whenever we had that representative that was there in those meetings all the time, you always heard that person really being an advocate and talking about it and keeping it on the forefront of everyone's minds. I think it's great. to look at bringing this back. KK, I appreciate you putting it on here.
In the past, they met and had breakfast, and it kind of got willy-nilly where we were more interested in the breakfast than we were the stats sometimes. So we're going to try to make it a little more professional this time. We've made kind of an outline. We're asking your members to please try to attend three of the meetings, because if you miss taking that information back. Well, I don't want to go today, so who cares? So we did make it a little more professional, a little more of an outline to try to get this rolling out. Do you have any questions?
Do we need to set a deadline so that way you are able to gather?
Well, I did set
Representatives.
a deadline asking them to notify Miranda, our office assistant, as to who was going to be the representative so that we can get them on the email. And we've had a little bit response, but I was going to send a reminder out on that as well. I think I wanted it in here by Friday the 24th, if we could. So we'll have time to get it out and get everything set up on it. If you have any questions about anything. I was going to take the moment. My safety staff is here this morning. I don't know if everybody knows Don Gust. Don, you want to stand up? Don's our safety coordinator. He represents the courthouse, the annex, and juvenile. And he's the safety go-to person for those. And then Brad Hermes is back. He was with Oklahoma County before. He's now back. He is mainly doing workers' comp, but he is also taking care of our district yards as our safety representative. So they are the ones helping push this as we go forward.
Well, we appreciate you keeping us safe.
Do you need anything from us?
No, not really. Just wanted to get it out here in the public and help maybe people understand why we're putting it back in place.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
you.
KK. Don, Brad, thanks for all you guys do.
Absolutely. So we're going to move to number 8. Number 8 is the discussion and possible action regarding an update related to the transfer of SHINE program from Oklahoma County District 2 to the Oklahoma County Court Services Department to also include policies, procedures, and other information related to the program. Is there anyone from Court Services to speak today?
No, Grant couldn't be here. This was something that we wanted to kind of discuss since we're kind of moving forward with a new program, and not a new program, but a new program to one of our departments. Have some discussion. Grant's not, excuse me, able to be here today. So I would probably at the end of the meeting, I would like to either recess this meeting until next week when he's back, and then we can continue on. Or if we need to have a special meeting, we can have a special meeting. But one way or the other, I'd like to have a discussion when he's back next week.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Okay, so there's no action needed other than we'll meet again or have a special meeting to discuss. So we're going to jump to number 13 on the agenda. You there? Number 13 is to discuss and possible action regarding ARPA premium pay. And Micah, is Micah here with us today? Micah, do you want to join us in regards to discussing? Okay.
All right, thank you. Team effort here. All right. So we've had a couple discussions about premium pay, so we're ready to bring that before you today on how we got to some calculations, and then our recommendation today would be to walk through all these items and individually vote on these items so that we also capture the intent of this board. So calculations on premium pay were based on eligibility determined as of 2022. You may remember last month there was that vote, so that has been voted on how eligibility is determined. 1 month's paycheck was calculated as of pay of also June 30th, 2022. That has not been a formal vote today, but based on that has not been a vote based on if it's pay of 2022 or 2023, although the numbers that were put before this board previously have always been 2022 numbers. So we wanted to make sure we captured the intent. We did ask directors to validate that employees worked 173.33 hours, but 1 month in aggregate. We also had that this includes all county employees, and want to make sure that you know that includes 3 Metro employees that are part PBA employees. Also for this, we included 7.65% for benefits and a 10% margin, so that if we, as these checks start to go out the door, if there's anyone that a director validated was not eligible, but we determined is eligible, there's a little bit of margin there. So here are the categories of employees, and these are how Treasury defines these. One, there's all non-exempt employees that are under the 150% threshold, so they make less than the $36.81 an hour, and that comes to the total of 2.5, a little over 2.5 million. You can see that's about 581 employees. I'll walk through all of these and then we can have a discussion. And then the non-exempt employees over the threshold, so those are making over the 36.81. Treasury says that they are eligible, but we wanted to make sure to capture the intent of this board, was that board wanting to capture all those non-exempt employees over that threshold. So that's all the non-exempt employees, and Treasury says there's no cap on non-exempt employees. So then there's exempt employees, and so Treasury clearly says only exempt employees under a threshold are available up to the difference that you can't make over the threshold. So that's that category there, that this won't be a flat 1 month, it'll be up to where you hit that threshold. And then we also pulled part-time employees. There weren't many here on those part-time employees, and we assumed an 86, a half month for calculations today to show you guys those part-time, both non-exempt and the one exempt employee is also eligible because it's under the threshold. And so that total comes to that a little over $3 million. Anything you want to add, Micah?
No, sounds good.
So open to discussion today. Our recommendation for the minutes would be to go down and vote each of those 5 items, 1 through 5, yes or no. And then that way we can have a total, so we captured the full intent of this board. And also happy to talk through questions.
Well, I just want to make clear that, on this document on number 2, it says over the 150% threshold. You touched on it, but according to the Treasury document, the final rule, there is no threshold as it relates to non-exempt employees. So when we say over the 150% threshold, that really doesn't exist for that category of employee. The threshold of 150% is only for exempt employees. So.
Correct. And so those exempt employees over the threshold aren't even on this sheet, but wanted to make sure that we captured the intent of this board, that those non-exempt employees who are eligible via Treasury was the intent.
Yeah, so I think pulling the non-exempt employees, whatever their salary amount is, since there's no threshold according to the Treasury document, then we'd be treating non-exempt employees differently based on something that's not in the Treasury guidelines. So to me, just my personal opinion, I don't think 1 and 2 should be delineated as any separation. I think those are the same qualification. So all 594 of those employees.
Can I say something, Cody?
Sure.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that it wasn't known till today that that wasn't a threshold for the non-exempt, so that's why it's split on this slide. I don't think the BOCC ever knew about that either. So
I would like to know more. There was a threshold and now there isn't?
No. I think what happened was we were presented with some information before, and I think this board, as well as BOCC, was under the impression that there was a threshold. I went back and reread the Treasury guidelines and talked to Accenture and cleared this all up. And that's why the new document went out, was because of the clarification. So there's never been a threshold since the final rule was published. There's never been a threshold for non-exempt employees. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
The 150% threshold only existed for exempt employees. So if you're an exempt employee and you make over the threshold, you don't automatically qualify to receive a premium pay. You would have to do a separate written justification and hope on the back end that Treasury, because you can't get a pre-approval, you'd have to hope on the back end that Treasury agrees with that statement. So I think that we just weren't particularly clear on what the guidelines were. Now, I think we are. We're all on the same page, right?
Yeah, this is,
So there's no reason to delineate, is what you're saying. 1 and 2
Absolutely.
can be merged.
we could take that as a combined vote, all non-exempt employees.
And so we have roughly over 4 million, 4.5 million left over in order to use in other ways.
Yeah, so if all 5 of these items are approved, that will come to that 3 million, and the original bucket there is that 7.5, so there'll be 4.5 million.
But right now, we're just talking
We're just
about
talking
what's
about-
an appropriate motion under this presentation to get
Yes.
us there. Correct.
So we
And
could
you're
vote,
saying not to separate. Your preference is that we merge 1 and 2
1 and
as
2.
one item.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that since the Treasury guidelines allow for premium pay for non-exempt employees regardless of their salary, that any of our premium pay that we give to our employees, all non-exempt employees would qualify.
It doesn't change the underlying data, right? The
Right.
numbers stay the same.
so that could be the first motion, all
Do you have a
non-exempt
motion?
employees, that would be.
Yeah,
the
I'll make a
594.
motion that all non-exempt employees, regardless of their salary, qualify for premium pay since there is no threshold on that category.
And so
I'll s-
that's item 1 and 2, my back, it's that 2.5 plus the 145,000.
I'll second.
So to me, it's the 594 employees because those, we've learned in the past, sometimes pennies get off and whatever, but those number of employees should qualify. So,
Okay, we have a motion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. And again, that was already your analysis. We're just talking the semantics of how you're describing the numbers.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
aye.
Okay, motion carries.
So then we
So-
go to item number 3, the exempt employees under the threshold.
And I think the exempt employees just categorically, and I could be wrong, I was not sitting, but I think the impression that this board and BOCC got from the previous meetings was that exempt employees didn't qualify. That is not the case. Exempt employees do qualify according to the Treasury guidelines. The final rule, they've always qualified. However, there is a threshold for that category that your salary, including the premium pay, cannot exceed the 150% mark, which is the $36.81 an hour that was determined. I don't know if Accenture did it or Mike. Mike has worked very, very hard on this. So I think there was some question as to whether there was intent for exempt to be included or not because they weren't discussed before. I feel like the reason why they weren't discussed before is because we were under the impression that they didn't qualify. So once again, just like on 1 and 2, I think any exempt employee that's under that 150% threshold, they automatically qualify as to the Treasury guidelines. So I think they should qualify in our premium pay package.
And and Mike can also speak to this, it's up to the threshold. So if you were making right below the threshold, you can only make the difference of the threshold, which may be a smaller,
Yeah,
you know,
so
$20
I think it's 36.81, right? So if you made 36.80, that's a penny. So a penny at 80 hours, it's about $1.70 a month, and we're talking a 15-month period, right?
So I don't know the full amount of the salary per year, it's 76,540. So this has a difference if those employees were exempt but made less than that, and that 1 month stipend is up to that 76,000 yearly amount. So it's not,
It's not what?
well, you're talking about an hourly rate of 36.81.
But if you multiply that out, 36.81 at 20.80
Right, it's
divided by 12,
76,000.
that's what I'm doing.
Right,
And
it's the
that's
same.
about $2 a month is what that comes out to. So we're looking at a 15-month period that we can apply this to. So $15 a month $2 a month at 15 months, it's $30.
Right.
So if you were a penny under, that's all you would qualify for.
No, just for the 1 month.
Yeah.
Just for the 1
Yeah.
month difference, correct?
No, it's it's a yearly, so the number on this slide is based on a yearly amount.
Mhm.
So if we need to add those 3 months to it, then we need to add those 3 months to it. That it will fall within the 10%.
But it's only for a 1 month check, up to the 1 month.
Yes, but up to the 76,000 a year.
Right, I got you. The reason why I wasn't using the 76 and I was using the penny an hour is because I know the 3681 number, because that's what was presented. The math is the same. Assuming the 3681 is the 76,000 a year, your math's the same. Now, what does matter is if you take that $1.70 some odd cents, whether you're multiplying it by 12 for a year or whether you're multiplying it by 15 for the entire eligibility period. I mean, but you're off just a few dollars. The point is, if you're really close, that check could be really, really small.
So I feel like we have some additional comments behind you.
Yes, if you don't mind. So, Brandon Holmes from the Sheriff's Office, if you don't know who I am. Really, I just kind of wanted to bring up kind of more of a question, I guess, and provide some historical context to it. But it looks like it's going to be based on 1 month pays calculation. Just some of the concerns that, I personally have. I mean, I don't really speak necessarily for anybody else, but at least for the Sheriff's Office, one of the concerns we have just with doing a 1 month pay and doubling that person's pay is that historically in the CARES Act, when we provided hero pay, we gave everybody, regardless of where they work, the same stipend. So in essence, it's almost like we're saying that, well, since one person makes $2,500 a month, that's what their COVID exposure is worth, compared to somebody that makes $4,000 a month now, that's what their COVID exposure is worth. And again, so like in the CARES Act, I know that we, like between us and juvenile and emergency management, for example, those were three of the groups that were provided, I think they called it hero pay at the time, and it was a set flat amount. And I guess what I mean is that I just want to make sure that, I mean, the board's decision is the board's decision. I'm certainly not here to stifle any of that, and that's not going to be it. If that's what we can get, certainly I'm glad for the employees that are eligible. For example, I don't think that our employees should make maybe more in some cases than maybe Mr. Warren's employees. I mean, I feel like our COVID exposure is worth the same amount of money. I mean, the risk is the same. I mean, I understand why people make more because obviously their longevity, their experience, but I just kind of wanted to at least, if that was a possibility, to maybe consider that. And if not, again, it's not the hill I'm dying on, but I certainly at least wanted to bring that as a historical reference that that's how we've done it in the past. And again, it was just kind of a little concerning possibly that one employee and even maybe two employees that do identical work that have worked here for a different length of time that make different amounts of money, that their COVID exposure is worth a different monetary value. So that was really all I wanted to say. She might have something else to add to that, but that's really what I just wanted to at least point out to the board if possible for consideration. And again, not the hill I'm willing to die on, but at least wanted to bring it up.
Now, Brandon, just real quick to your point, any consideration on the non-exempt employees, I think we can look at it. It could be looked at that way. Sure. On the exempt employees, we would still have to consider that 150% threshold.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Over the period of time. And so the way that the final rule reads is that you can qualify under one of those. There are the three criteria under the 150% was what was originally in there. They added the non-exempt, and then there's still the written justification. You only have to qualify under one of those methods, and you don't have to select one and then apply that across the entire population. You can look at each individual and determine which of those three methods they can.
Well, yeah, I think that's what we're doing. And that's why when the document was sent out, there was a question on there, is your employee exempt or non-exempt? That way we know which category to put them in so that we can choose the appropriate.
Right. And there's the June 30th, 2022 ending date is an arbitrary date. The premium pay is the only thing in the legislation that has a retroactive piece to it. You can go back to January 1 of 21. So it's the only piece that's retroactive, and then forward into the future with the idea that our staff as public servants are still at exposure risks, whether they were employed prior to June 30th of 2022 or we hired them since. And that's another aspect to this that's a little that that creates a little disparity is that if, for instance, we have employees that came on staff after June of 2022, and the way it's currently being discussed, they get nothing for the same exposure that the other deputies get. So just something that we wanted to make sure historically we were being consistent, at least gave that as an opportunity to be discussed.
Yeah, I think currently what's been looked at is that particular period that ended June 30, 2022. I think there could be potential discussions either now or in the future about doing a different period, a new period on top of that. But I think if we're using that period and that period's ending June 30th, I think it makes sense if we're not using just a flat rate, what Mr. Holmes had mentioned, it makes sense to use the salary at the end of that period because we're talking about that particular period. We're not talking about a period now. If we were going to adjust the period to now, then maybe we could look at a different pay rate. But if we're looking at a monthly pay rate and it's just for that particular period, I think that's the appropriate way to look at it, especially when we're talking about exempt employees and the 150% threshold, because we've got to be able to knock that down, that during that period, if that's what we're paying for, their salary wasn't more than that threshold.
I think our concern, just departmentally from the standpoint of paying out the salary, is that means our captains are going to be compensated at a rate quite substantially higher than our patrol deputies, who, are the ones wrestling people to the ground more than 6 inches, close to people. So, and consistently in the past, what we had done was the same amount, not just across our department, but emergency management and juvenile as well. And so it had been our original recommendation when we made the application in May. Mm-hmm. And to do something evenly to compensate in the spirit of the rule, that this was compensation for the exposure, the risk, the continued work, and not necessarily the rank or time in service.
Right.
That was our perspective on the amount.
And I believe the 6:30 date had already been voted on by P&G previously. And so,
and BOCC, I believe that was my ask at the last meeting, was to get the genesis of that date. And it was my understanding that date came from a previous BOCC meeting, and so probably not for us to be able to move right now. Not that
Right.
can't be, as you pointed out, maybe looked at differently, but my understanding of our role right now is to simply get into the granular of what they have already done. And then that's my understanding, is what they have already done with regard to date.
I know the discussion at P&G was a 1-month stipend, not necessarily defined within the discussion of P&G in the open meetings. The idea that instead of, it was sort of a range that Accenture had put together, 17+ million versus 7.5 million. How much do you, as a recommending body, want to recommend setting aside for this particular topic? Mm-hmm. And the details, to the best of my knowledge, in that P&G meeting weren't nailed down, but they could have been in BOCC meetings.
Well, and I think our intent is to try to do this as fair as possible, understanding that it's not going to be in certain people's, it's not going to be as fair as we would like it, right? I mean, for instance, there are exempt employees that make barely over the 3681 that may have been in the office every single day for that particular period, and they're not going to qualify at all. And a non-exempt employee that over a 15-month period, I mean, we're talking aggregate 30 days in the office. So all they had to work was be in the office for 2 days every single month. I mean, 15 times 2 is 30. I mean, that's a month. And so they would qualify for the full amount, being in the office for a much shorter period of time than maybe some of their supervisors that are in there every single day. But because of the Treasury guidelines, we can't really do anything about that. So
justification, 100%. One of the 3 methods from the very beginning, it was one of the methods.
Well, sure. Yeah, we could do written justification on there, but we can't get pre-approval on that. The consultant has already said that is a dangerous road to walk down. I don't think that we can I'm not comfortable rolling the dice on that because we don't know whether those would be approved or disapproved. And if they're disapproved, then the county will have to find that money to repay Treasury for, in their mind, misspent dollars. So you're right, there is a potential to get there, but it's a very, very slippery slope.
And we haven't ever, in any of our proposals, recommended written justification. I was just pointing out that as that argument, there is a way that you can address that if you feel like you do have an employee who doesn't meet one of these two and legitimately should qualify for some sort of compensation on top of because of the risk that they are exposed to on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, no.
There's a way to address that.
What I was trying to get across was that while different aspects, people may not think that it's fair, there's always going to be something in here that's not perfectly fair. I mean, we can't make it as perfect as we would like. I think all three of us up here would like to say all of our employees that interacted with the public, regardless of their employment status, exempt, non-exempt, regardless of their salary, whatever, that they would be able to qualify and receive premium pay from county ARPA dollars. I think we would all like to see everybody taken care of, but we can't do that. And so here we just have to figure out the closest way forward that we can get there, understanding that it's not going to be perfect.
We're just asking you to consider the consistency of what we've done in the past.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it to the podium. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Accenture and Micah, do you want to join us again to finish the conversation in regards to the rest of the items on premium pay?
Yes, I think we were at item number 3, the exempt employees based on that 1 month stipend under the threshold, up to the difference of the threshold for the 1 month. That's item number 3.
I move that those employees under the threshold that are classified as exempt employees would qualify for premium pay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we can also take these together or separate, but part-time employees, non-exempt, and then there's one part-time employee exempt that's under the threshold.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Well, I was just a little confused on part-time exempt. How does that work? KK, you're our HR director. Yeah, are you?
On their special revenue fund.
Okay, I just, my big question on this is you're saying assumes 86.67 hours.
It's a way to make the calculation for part-time employees. We could do a different calculation.
Could we not, if we're talking for every other full-time employee, we're talking about 1 month's worth of pay, could we not look at the period? So it's a 15-month period, right? Could we not look at the 15-month period and the part-time employees that qualify, you would take their
an
average pay for that 15 months. If they only worked 7 months then you would divide it by 7, but what their average pay was over that period, that would equate to what we're doing for the full-time employees.
We could do that, I think. And Micah, that will just take a little bit of time for the part-time employees, if they want to take the average of their monthly pay instead of the half-time pay. It's doable. It'll take a little bit of time to calculate that. And so we don't have that number in front of us today. If you want to move forward with part-time, an average of their pay over the 15 months.
I mean, I think to get back to Dom's point a minute ago about, the board already looking at the June 30 number and that 1 month salary, I think that to remain consistent, if we looked at, we're talking 14 employees. So, we've got the data. If you want to send it to me, I can do the average pretty fast. But if we figure that average for each employee, then that's going to be what their monthly pay was on average. So we're staying consistent with the program, because you may have some part-time employees that are working 14 hours a week and some that are working 28 hours a week, and that should be different if we're using the model that we have already discussed, which is the 1 month's pay.
So we could amend that motion, we just won't know the dollar amount today.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Are the law library employees included in this? Did you include us?
Not in that number.
Okay. Is there a way that we could include the Oklahoma County Law Library employees with this premium pay?
I think right now, all we've looked at are Oklahoma County employees. I think law library employees are not county employees. Is that correct?
Well, we're in the building, and if the building is open by the commissioners, and we were open, we were working also, so we didn't.
Yep, that's the same with the public defender's office. That's the same with the DA's office. We've got other entities like that. Yeah, I think there is an opportunity for you to request premium pay for your employees, but my understanding was that this was only
Not include us.
correct.
County employees, that's right.
Correct.
That was the motion, as I understood it.
Yeah.
It's my understanding we've had a couple other come before this board and ask for premium pay, and because they were not county employees, were not considered at that time.
Yeah, I think what BOCC has looked at here, this is an internal BOCC county employee premium pay program. Doesn't mean that we can't do premium pay for other entities, including employees that are passed through the county for pay. I'm sure, I mean, I don't know for sure, but there may be applications on our the public portal. There's the ability for us to offer premium pay to certain positions. You know, if hospitals applied or whatever, we could provide premium pay there. So just because you're not included in this particular premium pay program doesn't mean that you can't request and potentially receive funds for premium pay for your employees.
And that portal is located on the website, and it's open until Friday the 17th. We're talking about the community portal.
If you are going to apply, though, well, and stay through it, because you can't start it, get out, and then go back in. There's no save feature. So I've been trying to let people know that, so you don't spend an hour and then leave and think it's saved, and then you have to start over. So, yep.
Thank you.
So did you want to, are you moving the option that you proposed earlier with creating an actual data-driven average?
Yes, I'll make a motion that employees included in numbers 4 and 5, part-time employees, whether they're exempt or non-exempt. Now, the exempt, of course, you got the 150% threshold. We got to make sure that they don't exceed that. But those 14 employees, we would use their average pay during that period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we are going to move to numbers 9, 10, 11, and 12. 9 is the, you ready? Okay.
Yeah, just real quick, I know I mentioned a minute ago, the sheriff's office brought up some good points on the premium pay, and if we need to have further discussions at a later date for different periods beyond 6/30/2022, I think we would be willing to consider that if there's money and funding available.
Absolutely. Okay. So number 9 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA project 10033 court clerk 4th floor remodel. This item was approved on December 5th, 2022 in the amount of $8,760,000. The project is potentially short $1,100,000 because it initially did not contemplate or include relocation of displacing assessor's staff currently using space on the 4th floor. The project needs to be enlarged to include remodel of the space on the 3rd floor to provide for office space for this displaced assessor employees, as well as remodel of the 1st floor to provide space for MIS. Stacy? Do we have a motion to receive report?
Motion to receive document.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with the assessor's issue. That when I received this project, just started looking at it, all the different things, dominoes would have to fall to make it happen. Based on the spreadsheet I just gave you, it looks like there's going to be a shortfall. If you in fact move the assessor's people to a different floor, which would cause MIS to go to a different floor. This is the kind of money that we would need. In this as the owner's rep, that is already contracted on the first line there. If we would add these other pieces, we'll have to amend that owner's rep to include that money. The architect contract's already negotiated in place. The asbestos removal comes from state contract, but in full disclosure, I think I can beat that price if I go out to bid, but I can't go out to bid till this summer because we're not ready. And if I do beat that price, we can solve some of our own problem here. But just in case I can't beat that price, you need to be aware of the shortage that we would have. The other items down the page there are the best guesstimate that I have today of what those prices are probably going to come in as. And then we have rental payments for all these entities while we're redoing the fourth floor. They're going to go to ICB, and that rental rate was just recently approved this month by the board. I think we added 6.5%, so it's a constantly moving number. That could happen again next year. So I think I've got that covered for the next year as well. But it's not an exact number because it's a guesstimate. But the shortage, as you'll see on that spreadsheet, is about really close to 1.1 million. And I think there's other entities that want to talk about this item.
Okay. Rick, would you like to speak regarding this item?
Before I start, I'm going to have Mike go through a timeline to bring everybody up to speed on how we got where we're at right now. Go ahead.
Before I do that, I have to say, sorry, Cody, but the sophistication and the class of this board has improved by at least 67% in 2023.
Motion to deny.
Just thought it'd be useful to kind of go back through how we got to today, at least from our perspective. In the springtime, we were given a pretty short window. Consultants are not paying attention, but we were given a pretty short window to apply for funding. In checking with others in the building, with the facilities director, trying to get a handle on what have we spent on projects previously, the number $300 a square foot was arrived at. And so we applied for $8.4 million, which is $300 times the floor, 28,000 square feet. We rounded it down from the normal number. Then we waited until November when that was early spring. Then we waited until November when this committee recommended that project to the BOCC. Early December, the BOCC approved that project. Then in January, we were invited to a meeting with the architect, a kickoff meeting, where we learned that what previously we had thought was a project for the court clerk's remodel on the fourth floor now was also going to include money for the assessor's office. When they arrived at that meeting was the first that we knew that the amount that had been approved was going to be reduced to cover for that. Then about 10 days after that, Stacy came and met with us in our office. The budget at that time was about $600,000 short, maybe a little bit more, but was looking to us for solutions to that $600,000. What Mr. Warren communicated at that point was, the project scope has had some creep here, and it's not really our responsibility to solve. When you add cost to the project, we don't have $600,000 laying around to make that up. We talked about different things, but like going to the BET and going to the budget board and asking for general fund dollars, but that was not something that our office wanted to do at that time. Then last week, we had the special budget board meeting where we learned about the figure from the owner's representative. I didn't handle that news very well, and I'll take this opportunity in front of the world to apologize to Stacy for my anger last week at that meeting. If I'm going to be angry in front of other people, I should apologize in front of other people. So sorry about that, Stacy. And then today we learned that there's an additional $500,000 added to remodel the MIS area on the first floor. So if you just kind of run through those numbers really quickly, originally we had $6.25 million to remodel the court clerk's fourth floor, which was the $8.76 million minus the $2.5 million for the asbestos removal. Now, if you take that 6.25, you take off 526 for the owner's rep. Now there's an amendment to that contract of another 96,000, and I guess that's the amount for the assessor and the MIS to oversee that part. You take off 1.1 million for the assessor's remodel, $818,000 for rent in ICB, another $500,000 to relocate MIS. Now what we thought we had, a budget of 6.25 million, is actually 3.2 million, 3.210. So I don't know if we're short $1 million, if we're short $3 million, or if we're short some other amount. But it seems that we keep piling more and more and more into this project. And I'll let Mr. Warren kind of address what his druthers would be on that.
Can I just real quick, since you talked about the timeline?
Yes.
I think, speaking to Joe, because he's our primary, and I wanted to kind of get, up to speed. And what his recollection was that when we were doing the fourth floor, it was going to be a remodel for the fourth floor, and the assessor was going to stay there, thus not necessitating the expense of relocating MIS to the first floor or relocating the assessor to the third floor, which on this document is about $1.6 million between those two projects, not counting the owner's rep fee that's associated with those two. So if we didn't have those two, which is what Mr. Blau had indicated was the initial thought process that we were doing, if we didn't have those two aspects on here, well, actually the three, if you have the owner's rep, we would actually be, those are 1.6, and this is showing a $1.1 million shortfall, so it would be 500,000 ahead on the budget.
I didn't keep up with your car dealer math there, but now were those internal? I'm sorry, I didn't follow it. I wasn't listening close enough. I'm not blaming you, but were those internal deliberations with Mr. Blau, or was that out loud deliberations in a public meeting about the fourth floor? Because we had gone on the assumption that we were going to have the entire fourth floor for a long time. These discussions are not new. At one time, there were discussions with the assessor's office and others around the building about the assessor using the area across from Butch's office, and then the plans for that changed. There was talk at one point of the assessor using the fourth floor space in the ICB. I don't know what'll work best for them. I'm not trying to. I don't want to speak for the assessor's office. I want you to take care of the assessor, but I want you to take care of us. And I think
all I can tell you is that the assumption, whether it was internal or external,
the board's assumption or Mr. Blau's assumption
was that, well, I can't speak for their offices,
and they weren't
And
here.
we weren't
Right.
here.
but was that it would be a remodel of the fourth floor, but there wasn't a discussion that people that were on that floor were no longer going to be on that floor, which would necessitate them to move.
Although, when we were talking about trying to space our employees out, I think there was some discussion about that.
Well, but I know that
We can't space our employees out in the same number of square feet that we have now.
Sure, but I think conversations with Stacy and Keith were that it may not be as spaced out, but they could make it work. But I'm just telling you where in my mind why these numbers have changed based upon what the initial allocation was.
All right, but when we started this, when we met with your experts and your specialists, the whole idea was our employees work 3 to 3.5 feet apart. They said that we totally qualified for the ARPA money for the fact that we need to move our people 6 foot apart. Our customers, 1,500 a day, are 2 and 3 feet apart in that little hallway. There's no way. So the fact that we're using ARPA money was derived from the simple fact that our people, our staff, our customers, the people we serve are less than 3 feet apart. That's why we have the money. We're not using county money, we're using ARPA money. So when you tell me that you didn't consider, or somebody that's not here did not consider the fact that that's the reason we're doing the remodel, is the simple fact that we have the money now because we qualify for the ARPA money. So when we're not gonna expand the space as was agreed on the very beginning, when we're not gonna do that, then we no longer qualify for the ARPA money. If we're gonna remodel the court clerk space and leave it the same size and leave the same number of employees and have our staff where they're touching each other, have our customers where they're not moving apart, then it makes no sense to commit a fraud and use ARPA money when we're not really spreading our people out. So if the people that you're referring to, the second deputies, chief deputies that you're referring to, had no knowledge that we were expanding the floor, I don't know where they were.
Well, I do know there were conversations with Stacy and Keith about whether you could be spread out in your existing footprint, but change the space, whether it would qualify and they would be able to spread your employees out. And the answer was yes.
Who gave you that answer, and when did y'all arrive at that, and what room were you in when that happened?
We've had the conversations with Stacy and Keith. I've heard them tell me that in my office, in Joe's office, in doing our due diligence following up.
Is that correct? Did y'all come and measure our floor and measure our desk and figure out that we could move our people more than 3 feet apart?
Not specifically the footage, but I think on one end of the hallway, there's no counter space now. You're going to get some extra counter space. And then on the end of the hallway where the assessors are, if you left them there, you wouldn't get additional counter space. So there would be ability to spread out further, but I don't know if you get your 6 feet or not, because we did not do that measurement. So the answers, you're both correct. We were going to expand counter space. So more than they have today, but not as much as they would like, and maybe not enough to make the 6 feet. I don't know.
And I'm pretty sure there was probably conversation about how we arrived at that figure. And so if we arrived at that figure by taking the square footage of the floor and multiplying it by 3, if we had not contemplated utilizing that space in the corner, it's almost 3,000 square feet, would have been about $1 million less in our application. So, I mean, we're all kind of trying to put together a history in the past. But the fact is we started one place, and there's a whole lot more in this project than was contemplated at the beginning of this project.
Since we're also talking, thank you, Mike. Please stay. So since we're also talking about the assessor's office, is there anyone that would like to speak on behalf of the assessor in regards to their needs? And then just for clarification, Stacy, the document that you provided us in regards to the shortage, does that put the court clerk's office all on the 4th, or does it just renovate a portion of it?
No, that
Okay,
spreadsheet
this solves all the
contemplates
problems?
the court clerk having the whole 4th
Okay.
floor, and then moving assessor to 3, which moves MIS to 1.
Okay. I'd like to hear from
Yeah,
the assessor's office.
and just to be clear, I'm not making an argument whether we should or shouldn't do this. I was answering Mike's math about how we got there. Our interpretation was that that whole project was to remodel the whole floor, and that folks were going to stay there, so we weren't going to have those other necessary expenses. If those other necessary expenses absolutely have to be done, and we have to find the money, then I mean, I don't know where we find the money, but we have those discussions. I was trying to articulate a response to your timeline and why the numbers are a little bit different according to District 1's recollection.
2 things. One, I've got a suggestion. I don't know if that was a question on where to find the money, but you just say $4.5 million in a different category. But then to your question, what that does though, when you say this addresses all the needs, is it takes us from $300 a square foot to remodel down to $150 a square foot to remodel, because we have reduced the amount from 6 million to 3 million for that remodel.
And a suggestion I would like to make is, this was called, when we started, we voted back on December the 5th, it was called the Court Clerk's fourth floor remodel. I'm totally in favor of my good friend Larry getting the third floor remodeled. But I think we should call it the County Assessor third floor remodel. And it should be voted on, just like this one was voted on, just like we patiently waited for years to get this done. It should be voted on and the money should be allocated. I believe Larry asked for 2.3 million, and now we're saying we're gonna do it for under $1 million. And what's gonna happen, because I've done projects where we have Project Creek, where we got multiple projects going that are really connected. So we rob Peter to pay Paul, and we end up with 3 projects or 2 projects that are just halfway done. They're not done properly. So if we're gonna do it, we should do it right. Do it one time and do it right and get it done. Also, we're comparing the $300 a square foot that we're come up with. A lot of that was done a year or so ago. Inflation and the cost of construction is going up daily. And so as we start this project, and now we're lowering down, as Mike said, to $150 a square foot, we shouldn't start a project if we don't have the money. As you said, you know, where you're gonna get the money. You shouldn't start a project if we can't finish it, if we're not gonna do it properly. So this was voted on December the 5th as the fourth floor court clerk project. Now we've added all these other projects. And one other thing on the rent, we're taking it to a private sector. Our DA's office has said that we should charge as though it's a private sector. If you're gonna do that, then you gotta live with the entire private sector. And in the private sector, if you came in to remodel and I charged you for the remodel over there, I made you pay for that remodel, I would deduct it out of your rent. I wouldn't make you pay and then charge you the rent on what you just paid for. That's called double dipping. I just don't think, if you're gonna take one part of the private sector, take the whole ball. Don't just do part of it. And that's what you're doing when you're telling us that we're gonna pay for the remodel over there in the other building. And also we're gonna pay the rent.
You're not paying for the, I don't understand.
You've got the remodel,
I don't see
coming
the
out of our
remodel on
budget.
this. I just see the rent. I don't see the remodel.
Okay, it was in there at the beginning. Mike just told me you did.
Right, yeah,
change
because
that.
we had talked to Stacy and Keith whenever they came to us about a few weeks ago on the shortfall.
I missed.
And that's what we had said, we need to take that out of there because
Okay.
that shouldn't be.
It was in there when I last looked at it. Thank you.
You bet.
For the assessor.
Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you. Well, every time we do a remodel, we've got a domino effect. And the assessor's office learned that the court clerk contemplated taking the entire fourth floor, thus displacing them, and there were no accommodations made for relocating the county assessor's employees. And when I first started working for the assessor's office in the ADA, I didn't even realize they had a fourth floor because everyone goes down to 3. They have 42 employees on the fourth floor. So we took pictures in case you haven't gone to the fourth floor. But all these people are in charge of the real estate, and that is in excess of 335,000 accounts. So that's your basis for your ad valorem taxations, your nuts and bolts. They're critical to the operation of the county assessor's office. And that's when you log on to the county assessor's website, see the picture, see the square footage, the sketch, the value. They're responsible for all that. So as you can see, they're squished too. And they have to go somewhere. So what the brainstorming was, well, where should we put 42 employees that are squished? Is to relocate them to the 3rd floor to where MIS was. So I don't know if you're familiar with it. It kind of has blinds on it so you can't see in. It's over 3,000 square feet. I don't believe they're using the entire floor plan or all the floor square footage because they're moving to the cloud, but they do need some of it. But they could be relocated to the 1st floor. I also understand that might prove economical in the long run to the county because of utility costs for cooling all the MIS equipment. So the other option then because MIS space isn't quite enough, is to remodel the 2 common areas in the county assessor's office. Will you click through to the last 2? One more. Do we have one more? We're missing pictures. Well, if you've gone to the assessor's office, there's the west end. When you walk down the end of the hall, there is a fairly large lobby. What is proposed is to remove that lobby, remove that counter, use it as office space, secure that, and then allow access for the public to address the county assessor through windows, self-serve windows. And then basically the same thing for the general lobby if you're going straight to Larry's office on the north. Remove that lobby area and make that office space as well. So had some help from engineering, and so what is estimated is that shortage is $1.1 million to get that accomplished. What's important here is that everything is stuck unless a decision is made, because you can't go in and do your asbestos removal and demo the 4th floor and remove 40 plus people from the assessor's office without a plan for where they need to go. And we think this is a win-win. We'll move down to the 3rd floor, remodel MIS, and move MIS down to the 1st floor. I don't know the logistics on the MIS move. I think, is Stacy still here? Is that something they need to know about? Moving MIS to 1?
There's been talk about moving MIS for a couple of years before this project ever even happened. So this was kind of a catalyst that we could go ahead maybe and accomplish that now. We have visited with them. There is some good space on 1. It doesn't have to be 1, but there is available space there. And we could recreate their server areas that have to be air conditioned. And talking to Keith, probably cheaper than it's being air conditioned now on 3. So that's where the savings might come in operationally.
But back to timing, it's also my understanding you've got your ARPA deadlines. And if you want to make this happen, some decisions have to be made. And we can't just stop and say, okay, do we, don't we? And so the assessor's office thinks this is like I said, a win-win proposal. And it's, in the grand scheme of things, I don't see how it harms any other county office, court clerk or otherwise. They're still gaining space. They may not get the extent of finish out that they expected, since they're considering that per square foot. But truth be told, under an ARPA deadline, I don't think you can expect to have 5 finish anyway and get your projects completed.
What I would like to see, and I guess it would come from Stacy's office, is all needs assessed, and in regards to the budget to complete the project in its entirety. So MIS, assessor, court clerk, unless that's included. I feel like we're going to come back into the same meeting again to talk about MIS, because now they have nowhere to go, or they have needs in order for social distancing or being able to have, and so have we worked on what is our total need?
I think so. And I was going to ask Stacy something similar, but if I could just real quick.
Yes.
Dane, Rich, do you guys have anything to add? And then I wanted to ask Stacy a couple questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The biggest thing we would have to add is whether you move us or not, it's kind of irrelevant. We don't really care. Our concern is how do you move us and make sure it's done correctly.
We can't just be picked up and moved.
Right.
It's a little more involved.
And while we are fairly knowledgeable in what we do, neither one of us are data center architects, and we don't claim to be. We've had some conversations with a couple of companies that do data centers and gotten some information. I think that's part of where some of these numbers have come from. And on the surface, after a couple of phone calls, if we're going to do it, this is kind of the way so far we want to do it until we see evidence that says, no, maybe we don't want to go this way. But that's kind of our view on it right now.
So Stacy, are you comfortable with the $500,000 expense to move MIS?
It is the best number I have today, and I just didn't pull it out of the air. Our architect that we have hired has experience with data centers. They've actually done a couple of data centers for the feds. So they've actually built one. And so talking to them and talking to some of the vendors, I didn't talk to him, but Dane did, and I've talked to Dane. There seems to be a correlation that this number will work. Of course, when we get ready to build it, we're in the future. So how much more inflation and stuff are we going to get? That's always the long straw in these. So it's a good number today. Will it be a good number in 6 months? I don't have that crystal ball.
But the document that you provided then, are you fairly confident, not reading tea leaves into the future, that a $1.1 million infusion into this project, which this project would then be the court clerk's remodel, assessor remodel, and MIS remodel, not just a court clerk remodel? I understand what you're saying. Not all this money is going towards you and your project. If you had $1.1 million, would that fund all the necessary components to get the court clerk on the 4th floor remodeled, get the assessor moved to the 3rd floor, the necessary movements and rentals that are going to be necessary in ICB during that period, moving MIS down to the 1st floor? The $1.1 million would be sufficient to get you through all of that.
Yes, Rick may want to weigh in. The $4 million we got set aside for actually remodeling the 4th floor. What I paid on 6, that's plenty of money, but the finishes on 6 aren't as high a finish as I think they're expecting at the court clerk. So that's a number that may still be, he may want to talk about that a little bit.
I would encourage you to support this today, the 1.1 million, but I would also encourage you to set aside about $2 million, because I don't think this is going to be enough money. And we're comparing apples to oranges. What we did upstairs on 6, we're not talking finishes. What we're talking is differences. Walls, sheetrock walls compared to cabinets, as we'd have to have counters. And we don't want the Taj Mahal. We just simply want something that's fair to our employees, just like we want for your employees, that they can work comfortably and have a counter that works for them. All we're asking for is simply a build out that meets the needs of the court clerk. We feel like the 1.1 that you should vote for today, we want you to support it, but at the same time, my experience in construction is I would set aside an additional $2 million, because I feel like you're going to need it. And that way we don't start projects and come up short, because I don't think, like, the assessor has to have somewhere to go. They have to. That should be voted on immediately and decided. I mean, we have to make decisions on these people's lives, where they're going to be working, what's going to be happening in the future. They need to know where they're going. We need to know how it's going to come out. And the way we do it is with a set of plans, with allocated money, so we know what we're going to be spending. So I would vote today on the 1.1, but then I would also add this $2 million in reserves and be expecting to use it.
I want to add one thought. Once a construction project goes over $10 million, it does have to have fair wage. So that may increase the total cost. You have a different set of guidelines once any construction projects goes over at $10 million. So we'd have to look at those numbers and how the calculations were calculated.
We're talking 3 separate projects. That's why it should not be voted on as one project. It never was intended to be one project. You got 3 separate projects. You got one building that's a county building. You got the other building.
And we could separate them out, and then it would not be the $10 million construction project.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know where you guys are on this, but after talking to our primary representative and kind of looking at all this and going through, I would be comfortable with the $1.1 million, not the additional $2 million, but the $1.1 million, as long as the rest of the money that we do not allocate on on the premium pay, because that's what we're gonna have to use for this item, the $1.1 million, as well as the, I don't know, like $80,000 or $90,000 of other cost overruns. All of that, we're gonna have to, the only money left is the money that we're gonna not spend in the premium pay. So if we allocate the 1.1, I think we would be comfortable with that as long as we reserve the rest of the money that we don't spend in the premium pay, if we reserve that for community projects that applied through the portal.
There are some agenda items on here with a 20% increase.
Right, and that's what that's what I was
And
talking about.
so-
The $80,000 to $90,000 would be on top
Would
of this
be
1.1, so
included.
it'd be like $1.2 million. I
Yeah,
think whenever you add
86.5.
all that stuff up, if we allocated that from the ARPA premium pay savings and allocated the rest of it to community projects, we got over $150 million, and not considering the behavioral health, the potential behavioral health money that we put in there, because right now that's part of the jail project. Then we're looking at, if the Griffin Memorial Project goes through and the $2 million for Oklahoma City, we're talking less than $7 million of the over 150 going into the community. So if we're going to look at increasing these, we would want to reserve the rest of that money to go into community.
And that's
projects.
already set, is it
The
not?
4
My,
million.
my understanding is VOCC already adopted the bucket for the community projects. Or is that fluid still?
Yeah, what I'm talking about is increasing that amount. It's like $4.9 million.
No, I'm
something like
following
that.
you. So you're saying now we have a little bit of a different type of cushion
Right.
with the way the premium pay has played out.
Exactly.
The amount that we anticipate spending versus the initial cap.
Yeah.
And I'm asking though, my recollection, but this may be wrong, is that on the community projects, there also has been a set aside, if you will, you're saying we should, you want to make sure we don't dip into that. And I'm saying, do we even have the ability at this point?
No, the 4.9 is set aside for those community projects.
Right.
So I'm saying, what was the estimated on the premium pay that we set aside?
4.5, 4,500,000.
It'd be about 4.5, so if
Yeah.
you took the 1.1, you're
Well,
taking.
1.2, because we got some other stuff, so we're
You would
talking 3.3.
And he's
So
saying put
I
it
would say
with
we'd take that
community.
3.3 and add it to the 4.9.
So,
You're wanting to grow the community projects
Yes.
right now.
so I
Yes.
don't believe that the 1.1 is enough in order to do the construction of what they are asking for, because in all of the discussions with Gretchen and the county assessor's office, is their ask is 1.1.
That's in there, though. That's in
But
there.
then we also have 1.1 just for the assessors,
No. This document here that was handed to
and then now
us,
500.
that $1.1
It includes
million
everything, and you're very
includes
confident
everything.
with it?
Yeah, with the exception of some of the finishes, but I mean,
Right. And I'm just concerned
how about
about
if
the
you-
cost of increase in construction materials.
we're gonna have that situation in a lot of our construction
Right.
projects, so.
How about if you can say then that set aside money, if it's not needed for this project, could be made available for the community projects, but if we already know that we're short, then taking this money and saying, well, I'm not gonna support it unless I get more money for the community projects, just leaves this bucket short.
Mike, it's called negotiation, and we're willing to increase this if we can secure more funding for our community
And
projects.
do we need a separate
I
agenda item to do
understand,
that?
but you're negotiating with one office's money.
No, this is a project that's already been approved, and it
Right,
could,
and it wasn't approved in the fashion that it keeps creeping.
Mike, if the assessor's office doesn't move and they stay on the fourth floor, we remodel that entire area, and the assessor still has their spot, and we redo your area, then we don't have the extra expenses.
We're for all of those projects, and we think we should take care of all of those things. But if we want to go back and start renegotiating, we're only renegotiating with this one project, right? How many ARPA projects do we have? And
Because
how many
this,
bigger
because this
projects do we have?
project has increased in cost because of
Adding things to it.
because of moving the assessor off of that floor where they're currently located. Absent moving the assessor.
And we're never going to agree whether that was discussed or was not discussed, because we remember it being discussed. We can look at our numbers. We can justify the fact that it was discussed based upon our numbers. And your primary member of the committee remembers it differently. And so unless you can come up with an agreement on fact on that, you're not going to, we just have a difference of opinion about what we're doing here.
Sure.
So do we have to have a different agenda item in order to be able to separate a censure and county clerk to separate and vote?
But I do think my concern is that there is a, as I understand it, sort of a set bucket for community projects right now. I think it's fine. I think it's fine not to address the fluidity of this money and deciding that right now versus just proceeding with the construction overages and addressing how that leaves the money later. We don't have to decide that right now.
If we take the 1.1 today and all the other agenda items today, I think that, and then take the leftover premium pay, that still leaves about 3.3 million, based on all the other agenda items you guys have today. That could be set aside for community projects or other contingency projects. There's about 3.3 after all the other agenda items today.
Yeah, for later.
And then,
And I understand that, I mean, we need some contingency. That's why we put 20% in a lot of these projects. But for me, a contingency is sheetrock goes up from, you know, I have no clue what it costs, but let's say it's $15 a sheet to $17 a sheet. Well, you got $2 more a sheet times however many sheets, that project goes up. That's different than we're going to increase the finishes to a certain amount to go up to the $2 million. I'm sorry? What, to this? No, I'm talking about if we add the $1.1 million, you're saying that you think you'll need $2 million more than that due to the finishes.
I never mentioned finishes. That word never came out of my mouth.
What, Mr. Warren mentioned finishes, I thought.
Well, we talked about, there's a difference, Cody, in building that sheetrock wall and building the counter that people come in and work on. That sheetrock
and
wall.
just for minutes, you may have to speak on the mic so we can capture just.
Right, but there's also a.
It may sound silly to say, but we've selected an architect, but given him no instructions as to what we want to have built. That will drive costs. So you can either give him a list of those things that you want that meet the court clerks, the assessors, and MIS's needs, or you can give them a budget and say, design to this level so that we can make intelligent decisions. These estimates are just that today. The architect, I don't believe, has even met with the court clerk's office. MIS is talking about a server room. They designed these things. They've given us preliminary numbers. But until an overall plan is put on paper and vetted so that it meets everyone's needs, I don't know that you can even begin to discuss costs in detail. My guess is you would approve this $1 million today. And once plans arrive, we'll be looking for more money. I believe the architect needs to have specific instructions, either a dollar amount to design to, or a level of finish, and certainly an idea of use from all of the players who will be affected by this.
Well, we have a finite amount of money, so I think I mean, if we added the $1.1 million to this, that's the approach that I think you would take with the architect, is you would say, okay, Mr. or Miss Architect, we got $500,000 to relocate MIS, build it to that. We've got $1.1 million to remodel the assessor's area on the third floor, build it to that. We've got, however, the rest of that money, whatever it is for the court clerk's office, whatever, well, Yeah, we're adding the $1.1 million to get to what this budget is.
It will result in value engineering regardless of how you do this.
Exactly.
Rather than granite or quartz, you may get formica. Rather than any kind of a hardwood, oak, or maple, you might get something less, pine. In every category, I feel that it's going to be value engineering on some level.
Dawn, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'll move that we proceed with Mr. Trumbo's recommendation for the, what's the total?
The 1.1
1.1
million.
million.
1.1 million. I'll second.
I want to move forward with this project because my biggest concern, not just on this project, but on all of our construction projects that are funded at least part or fully through ARPA, is that lingering deadline of December 2026. And we have to get moving forward. Mr. Trumbo talked to me before the meeting about the importance of the timing on this to be able to get moving forward. I'm okay doing the 1.1, but I want to make abundantly clear that District 1 would favor moving the rest of the savings that we have from the ARPA allocation for premium pay that we don't actually use, moving that over to community projects at a later date.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask a question of clarification at this
Yes.
point? I appeared at yesterday's infrastructure meeting wondering when we could talk about the assessor's remodel for 3. At this point, is it possible for engineering to move forward with the architect and begin work so we can move forward on this deadline?
This needs to go to BOCC for approval.
And then it lands on the infrastructure list as a project.
Yes.
Yeah, if the BOCC approves the recommendation you just voted on, the scope is now set. That's huge. So now the architect has its marching orders, and we can begin to put designs and costs together that's going to be more finite than what you have in front of you today. So that was, appreciate the decision.
Just one further question or point would just be some consideration in the future, because we are bumping up pretty close to that $10 million figure of going ahead and separating out the projects so that we can kind of make sure that they're all very defined well and that we don't get across that $10 million.
Absolutely, we will do that moving forward.
I did want to note 2 things just for clarity. One, where we're taking the dollars from. We are agreeing that that is coming out of the leftover dollars from premium pay. Just want that out there. If we were to break up this project and include a portion for the assessor, I would recommend that the archived 3rd floor assessor's remodel project be the number code that is used, which is 10114. So that's a project code that already exists. It's just something that had been previously archived.
But that was
and not
for a
moved
different
forward with.
project. That was for I hesitate to use the word complete, but it was
Right.
for a more complete.
It was 3.6
remodel.
million, yeah. It was significantly more, but we can amend
Well,
the project code.
Well, we can, but I don't think we can do that on our own. The assessor applied for that. So I think we would need to get with the assessor and make sure. Marcy, are you guys fine with amending that project code to reflect the 1.1 million instead of the other? Because I don't want to get into the business of taking somebody's application and us arbitrarily deciding that we're going to change their application. Sorry?
We can create a new code. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll move on to number 10. Discussion and possible action regarding ARPA project 10117, camera security system, county. This item was previously approved on December 5th, 2022, in the amount of $583,951.24. Project funding is short $12,240 for owner rep fee. The project is short $44,500 for the 6th floor. This project was not included to receive the 20% increase for construction projects.
Yes, you'd mentioned that you'd taken the construction projects and added 20% to all of them. I kind of remember when you did that. According to the accountants, this one was not included. I don't know why it wasn't included for the 20%, but that's why you're short to have an owner's rep fee, because you didn't do the 20%. And then the 6th floor was not considered in the project because it was under construction at the time. And so Captain Basin did not know what the floor would end up being like, so he did not include it. He bought that off state contract, so it's pretty easy to amend that contract from state contract, and that's the 44.5 would pay for the 6th floor, so that your entire building would be under the same security system. And that's what I know about that project.
Stacy, I thought, and I don't know if Keith is still here or not, part of this estimate included the 4th floor, but we're redoing the 4th floor and it's going to be a remodel, so we're not going to do those cameras now. That's going to be down the road. I thought we were substituting the 6th floor for the 4th floor for now, and then come in on the backside when the 4th floor remodel is complete.
That is an idea or a possibility. I don't know that the 4th floor amount was enough to cover the 6th floor due to some wiring issues. So you may be a little short just doing a substitution. And there's multiple ways to do this. I would rather you go ahead and buy the 4th floor stuff and warehouse it, and then add to the 6th floor and go ahead and do the 6th floor.
But we don't know where we don't know
Right.
exactly what the 4th floor is going to look like, so we don't know where cameras are going to go, what wiring is going to need.
So we could, I mean, you could decrease the 4th floor as well, take that out of the current contract when you add this in, and then bring the 4th floor back in a couple of years, and it probably wouldn't even be ARPA money. We'd have to set aside some local monies to finish the 4th floor at that time. It's an approach.
Okay.
But yeah, you definitely do not want to install the 4th floor now, because we're going to get it. That's correct.
Will that be able to fall within the time frame of 2026?
Probably not. I mean, if you buy the equipment and warehouse it, you could install it later. You might miss a piece or two, or you might have a piece or two left over. Or you just take it completely out of the contract now and pay for it with local monies later, because you are not going to meet the timelines.
And then with ARPA guidelines, the project has to be complete, correct?
Installed.
Then that's not the best use of those funds.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern on just allocating money to the whole project all at once.
Can I say something about the 4th floor? The 4th floor, we're actually going to go ahead and we're changing the access control system. The readers and the wiring will stay in place. We're just changing out the boxes behind the wall. So I need to go ahead and do that part of it. Cameras aren't that really, they're not difficult to put up and then take back out. I don't think we're not really going to save anything, but I've got to have that 4th floor done. Otherwise, they won't have access control for the time up until the construction starts. Does that make sense?
So what is the cost of that? Those repairs and additions?
Well, again, all we're doing is taking a box out of a closet down and putting a new box up. So, And that way everything works together until it comes out. And then that will stay behind the wall. And then on the 4th floor, they'll just run the wiring to the readers wherever they are. That was the problem on 6. We didn't know where they were going to go.
And you're saying you do know where they're going to go on the 4th floor?
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. But in order, how soon are they going to start construction on the 4th floor?
I think demo's starting this fall, yeah.
Okay. Well, between now and then, I've got to have access control on that floor.
And you don't have it right now?
We do with a system that's going to go away.
When's it going away?
Just as quick by the end of the month, the end of
Okay.
next month.
Mike, did you have something?
We're happy to work with Mr. Basin and see if there's a way that we can secure those areas without having to have the access control system up and running on a temporary basis, since it's only going to be for a few months. If that would be helpful to get into a conclusion and a decision.
It's not as much a money thing here as it is, for me, an accounting potential nightmare on the back end if the project isn't completed and then we got the money in there, but then we don't, we purchase stuff. I think it would be better for us to not include that for now, and then maybe on the back end, if we have it available. I mean, we're going to make sure that you're secure, right, and that you have your cameras, and we're going to do whatever we can, whether it's, if there's ARPA money available, or, we have to use, other funds, but
he's speaking, if I didn't miss something, specifically on the access control. Our 3 points of access control currently, when you take off the ICB, are each end of the hall for the employee access where they badge in, and then the back door into our marriage license passport area. What I'm saying is, we don't have to rewire that for the new system if temporarily we can live without it, if that helps move the project along, if that makes sense. I'm not talking about cameras and all that.
Okay.
Cameras, I think they can use the existing cameras and just add those into the system now. And then, so it's not like, but we can warehouse the new ones.
Scoot over.
Or however you want to
Scoot over. He can't even begin a design until we have an architect's blueprint. Right. I don't know how long it'll take for our architect. Do we have a timeline there?
Yeah, if the BOCC takes a recommendation on the 20th, that architect's contract can be approved on the 20th or April 3rd. And then a few months in, he might have an answer.
So we'd have some set of plans at that time.
I don't think you'll have a set of plans in a few months, but you might have some answer to your question.
Hopefully, we'd have a set of plans before we do destruction in the fall. So if we know where wires need to go, equipment needs to go, we can plan for that. Just a simple thought.
So Stacy, in regards to the system, we cannot do anything until we have an architect. We don't have plans for the 4th floor, and we need that in order.
You can't deal with the 4th floor. You can deal with all other floors.
All the other. And so the $583,951.24, that goes towards a project that we can implement currently, or is that just 4th floor, just so I have an understanding?
583 is floors 1 through 5.
Okay, so it's not just, okay. And then the
44
shortage
is the 6th floor.
is the 6th
So
floor.
I'd recommend you put the 6th floor in this project. And then if the next meeting you want to take the 4th floor out, take the 4th floor out. How much of the 583 will be reduced, I can't tell you. Captain Baisden will have a better number, but you'll take a little bit off the 583.
I'm fine with that as long as Accenture is clear what we're doing and you guys are tracking what may need to be pulled out later. I just don't want to get into a, oops, we forgot about that.
Yeah, if the contract is broken out by floor,
Okay.
we'd be able to track that as a dollar amount.
Okay.
My concern also is reporting on once the project's done in regards to what was used and allocated by 2026.
Right, that's what I'm talking about, the accounting
The
piece that
accounting
goes into
piece,
that.
you know, we know you need it in order to complete the project. And so, yeah, just as long as we're being really strict in regards to our accounting, I would feel
I'm
comfortable
seeing
with
them
that.
say we are. Right. So I'll move, the 44.5 for the sixth floor of item number 10, the advance.
As well as the 12,240.
Is that are they in
That's for the
addition?
owner's rep.
He needs both.
Yes, and the 12,240, thank you.
I'll second that.
All
And
in
that,
favor?
and that'll come from the potential saving, that money will come from the money that we don't use in the premium pay.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So number 11 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA project 10046, Sheriff Midwest City Suspension HVAC project. This item was previously approved on June 21st, 2022 in the amount of $525,000. Project funding is short, $21,340 for owner rep's fee. The project was not included to receive the 20% increase for construction projects.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Also out of the premium pay savings.
I got it. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 12, discussion and possible action regarding ARPA project 10129, camera security system PBA. This item was previously approved and not included in the PBA subrecipient agreement dated March 6, 2023, in the amount of $492,258.01. Project funding is short, $8,420 for owner rep fee. This project was not included to receive 20% increase for construction processes.
This is a companion item to number 10.
Yes.
It's just the part that was broke out for the PBA, and it's the same issue. Since the 20% never went in, we didn't have owner's rep money.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Just real quick, I should have brought this up on 10 as well. These smaller amounts here for the owner's rep, I'm assuming since Digi and Captain Baisden are handling the day-to-day on that, the owner's rep fee is just for the accounting portion, correct?
Yeah, by and large, it's the auditing portion
Okay.
and not a lot of oversight because we have other people to do the oversight. They've got a
Motion to
little
approve.
oversight in there, but not much.
One more thing, and these funds will also come from the premium pay overage. Okay,
Yes.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we are going to go to the next item to discuss number 14. Discussion and possible action regarding the option to move the detention center capital projects to PBA. I put this item on the agenda. I visited with John Michael Williams as well as got a DA opinion from Aaron Etherington, and it is possible to move the detention center capital projects to the PBA or BOCC. And I feel like because I did not include BOCC also as an option, we need to strike this item and then discuss it in number 3. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, for me on the PBA side, and I'll mention this because this one is PBA. What we've done with PBA in the past when we've needed funding, whether it's for projects related to IT or roofs or whatever, if it's a PBA building, then PBA manages it, takes care of it, all of that. My issue with moving detention center capital projects to PBA, the biggest thing to me is the detention center is not a PBA property. So while, in my opinion, the PBA, if we were wanting to use PBA money, their money, not ARPA money, but if we wanted to use their money to fund the project, what we've done in the past is we transfer that money from PBA over to general fund, and then BOCC enters into the contracts or whatever to actually handle whatever the project is. I think since the jail is not a PBA property, I don't think it would be appropriate to assign the project to PBA because it's not one of their properties.
Yeah, after consultation, it is possible, but I would agree it would be better under BOCC, and we can discuss that in 3. So motion to strike.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So therefore, we'll move to number 3, as well as 4, 5, and 6. Number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding policies, processes, and procedures related to planning, oversight, and administration of Oklahoma County ARPA funding, allocation, grant funding opportunities, or other state and federal funds identified by county or censure to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic effects on Oklahoma County. And so we have Danielle with her presentation to discuss that.
So this was just going in order with the first topic of discussion we wanted to present with you today regarding detention center capital projects moving to BOCC. So these are their 5 capital projects that would be moved out of the detention center's subrecipient agreement and moved under the purview of BOCC. We think it would be best to reauthorize these projects at an individual project level so that just for the record's sake, we have it on vote for each individual one. So it would be projects 10073, 10074, 10077, 78, and 79.
One comment to add in regards to if those were moved to BOCC, from my understanding, in order to be able to that, we would have to amend the lease in order to have BOCC have the ability to repair the building.
Correct.
And so that would be passed on to BOCC for their decision.
Danielle, can you enlighten us why this is needed?
Yes. So between all of the conversations we've had, and to your point of it not being able to be a PBA project, and with the detention center kind of being a subrecipient and a medium risk, they are only able to do reimbursement. So by the county being the ones that are the project managers on this and kind of the oversight, also doing the procurement process of this and then the reporting process of this, it becomes a low risk because the county is considered low risk versus medium or high, and therefore it doesn't have to be on a reimbursement basis. So the county making these BOCC projects can upfront fund them versus doing them as a reimbursement.
Well, I seem to recall, I think I was sitting in this particular chair months ago and brought this solution forward about starting them from BOCC and funding them, and the detention center was not interested in that process at the time. So that has changed?
If they want to complete the projects, this would be the only way.
Okay, so this is because of the risk determination and being able to front fund or not front fund.
Correct.
And lack of capital.
I'm sorry?
And lack of capital.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have the funds to pay for these projects and then be reimbursed for them.
So since an analysis has already been done, this was discussed originally, whether BOCC handled the project.
Mm-hmm.
Projects, and that was declined. And then it was assigned over to the jail, to the trust, and there wasn't a risk assessment done. Now pulling it back from there because of the risk assessment, does that throw up potential red flags with the Treasury Department?
Not because the ownership is changing. If we were to go in and then make the detention center low risk in order to complete the projects, that would be a red flag because it would be obvious that we would be changing our determination in order to complete a project. Because the owner of the project is changing, it becomes the county's responsibility, and the agreements and the processes that the county has in place are different than what the detention center has in place. The county's procurement processes are different. The county's purchasing office is different. So all of those pieces go into how you make the risk assessment determinations. And so the county is a low risk. They were given dollars directly from the Treasury Department, and therefore as the project owner, it's not a concern. It would be a concern to change the detention center from medium risk to low risk. I would not recommend that.
Right, but I recall, and this was an offline meeting because you guys have had a lot of meetings with a lot of departments. We had met with you guys whenever we first found out about this issue, and Joe and I mentioned this about maybe moving it to BOCC. Not that we were in favor of it or not in favor of it, but just trying to talk about solutions. And you guys had indicated that that would be a red flag if we moved it.
I think just moving their risk assessment determination would be the concern.
Okay. You mentioned that the county is a low risk because we have our own purchasing procedures and all of that. So if we move any or all of these projects over to BOCC, these projects are going to have to go back out to bid, and we're going to have to start these projects from the beginning. Is that correct?
I would do them through the county process, yes, not through the detention center process.
And is the jail aware of that? Dale? Okay. Is that gonna, is that
Can
gonna?
we get that on the microphone? Would you like to come up
Yeah.
and do you have any comments?
Dale, can you come up?
We are in agreement that it should move to the BOCC.
Okay, are you under, have you guys entered into any contracts or?
We have not entered into any contracts, but we have gone out to bid, and we do have bids in hand that have expired since this is going on.
So every vendor or potential vendor associated with all these projects is aware that they're gonna have to, that the county is gonna have to send all this stuff out, and we're gonna have to do our own process and procedure, and they may or may not get the project.
They have not been told yet until this decision was going to be made, so we have not talked to them about it yet, okay?
Okay, I just want to make sure that you've not entered into any contractual agreements, and then we're coming in and potentially tortiously interfering with that contract.
There are no contracts in place.
Okay.
So from my understanding, should we move forward, we have to approve each item individually to move on to BOCC. And then would we list those individually in regards to each project? You want to stand? Thank you, Carrie.
Does the owner's rep need to be added to these projects if they're gonna be BOCC?
That would be a question
the
for Keith, and
20%.
they're nodding their heads. So then we've got an increase of 20% for each
Well,
project or
the-
individually?
The 20%
I mean,
that we
as a
added to
whole?
the projects wasn't just for the owner's rep, that was also to allow for 10% change orders and that kind of stuff. So back, kind of back to the court clerk's, item earlier about cost overruns. If there was the 20% that we added into those projects, there's at least 10% in there for cost overruns. on
The
most of
20%
these
is already in these line items. You did that initially, right?
I don't know that it's in each of these. I was trying to pull that up right now.
And the owner's rep that we just added to several had a 20% already built in, is my understanding.
That was for the owner's rep and cost overruns.
I mean, on the initial number, there was a 20% from the beginning, was my understanding. That was my
The
ask
sheriff's
yesterday.
office, the HVAC system out at their substation did not include the 20% up front. That's why we needed to add the owner's rep in there. And then the cameras, I don't think included the 20%. And they didn't include the 20% because the cameras, they were able to get that bid locally from Digi, and it was basically a guaranteed price. So we weren't really worried about cost overruns on those because we could get them immediately and get them installed.
And so this, you're looking to see if we did the 20% or not.
I know at least two of them at the moment too.
All of them except for the.
I think all except for HVAC, yeah.
This has a 20%.
78, 79. Yep. So each 74, 77, 78, and 79 have all been approved with 20% overlays. The only one that has not would be the HVAC system.
The biggest one.
So that would mean additional funds that weren't budgeted within the initial ask.
Yeah.
So just the HVAC?
Yes, that's correct. 420,000.
420,000 if we add
Additional.
the 20% to the HVAC.
So if we've got 20% in those other projects, there should be money there for the owner's rep.
Can you amend that so that way we can receive the report and vote on those individually?
Do you want us to amend the HVAC to add the 20%, keep all the other numbers the same so that you could vote on each of those individually? So it would be the 2,520,000 would be the HVAC.
Thoughts, Don?
Well, you would address one of my concerns in the beginning, the lease agreement, because it would need to be modified. If we're starting over and our purchasing department is going to be starting from scratch, then, and that is a county building where, you know, it's an asset that we want to make sure that we're maintaining. As long as we redo the lease agreement to allow as such, I think definitely the roof replacement and the loading dock updates and the sealing the existing metal roof, those are the physical aspects of the structure. I don't have really concerns about those. I do have a little bit of concern about the HVAC, whether that would be, you know, part of the building and thus, you know, us maintaining our asset to include that. I can see both sides on that one. The network upgrades, to me, that has nothing to do with the building at all. And a lease agreement that we would modify, network upgrades wouldn't have anything to do with that. So I wouldn't be comfortable with the network upgrades for sure. The others, I can either get there or I am there, depending upon the individual item.
Well, I believe out of care and concern for our detainees, making sure we have, you know, proper HVAC, and of course, from doing a tour, the loading docks become a security issue. And so, and then a roof replacement and sealing the existing metal roof is important also just due to continuing deterioration of the building, and it's going to be some time to build an existing jail. And so I would move to receive this report first. Do we have to move to receive each individual report?
We can send you on
Since it's not
deck.
Since it's not added to the original
It's not
agenda.
attached,
It's
so-
not attached. So motion to move to receive this report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
And in the future, why don't we go ahead and get those attached?
They get amended the night before tends to be the issue.
Okay.
Let's amend a day early,
Yes. Let's do
and then it can
or
get on
more.
there.
Yeah.
So, do we want a motion to approve these individually?
I will motion, just to be clear, that we are starting all of these from scratch, going into Chantel's office. I'll move that we move project ID 10073,
With
10074, 10077, and 10078 to BOCC with those numbers that are listed, and HVAC would be changed to the 2.5 million.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is discussion and well, hold on, we need to talk about network upgrades. So, are we,
I didn't understand your hesitation, I'm sorry.
It has nothing to do with the building,
Or
the physical structure of the building at all. It's, I can get there with us taking care of a BOCC asset, which would be the building HVAC is, I mean, it's a fixture, so I can get there with HVAC and all that. We are taking care of a BOCC building. The network upgrades, that has nothing to do with the building itself. To me, the trust should be, I mean, we can still fund that just like we have. We can leave the money in there for the trust, but they're gonna need to front fund it and then seek reimbursement on those.
Is there anyone from the detention center that would like to speak on the needs for network upgrades?
Hi, I'm Jeff Ama, IT Director. What's the question, I guess?
What are your needs with the 1,810,000?
That's to completely replace the network. That would also migrate us away from MIS. Needing their services makes us an independent entity in that regard. I do agree with what you say, Cody, as far as it doesn't have anything to do with the building structurally, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we desperately need it.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that you don't need it at all, but I think that it needs to follow the same process that everything else has, which would be a subrecipient agreement that we give you that money so that you can do those things, like what we've done for your reimbursement for other expenses. I think that lines into all of that other stuff. I think if we're talking about redoing our lease agreement to give us the ability to do these items, I think it makes total sense for us to take care of our asset, our building, and front fund that to make sure that they're taken care of, and then we can just reimburse ourselves. Basically, we wouldn't even be front fund; we'd be using ARPA to pay for it. But then on the network upgrades, you guys would front fund that, and then we'd reimburse you with
Yeah.
ARPA money.
Jeff, is it possible to do it in the network upgrades in phases in order to be reimbursed? Is that a possibility?
It's not ideal by any stretch of the word. I mean, that's going to make me have to bend over backwards. MIS would have to do some backward bending, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible.
My understanding of the reason for this is that they have a lack of ability to front fund, period.
Yeah.
So,
That is a concern. I don't know all the specifics behind the money and all that, but that is a concern. I know that's why I haven't gotten the green light to go yet.
I
your
think
point is that we don't have the obligation to help support the network upgrade, or that we're in conflict in some way with a contract we have existing, or the indenture, or rule and reg that I'm not familiar with. I understand your concern that a network upgrade doesn't equal a fixture and equipment similar to an HVAC. I'm guessing that you know, because I don't have the details of a network upgrade to know if that becomes a fixed or the details of that. But if it is not, then, and that is a concern, because that's the part I'm missing.
to me, if we're going to do these projects as a BOCC project, that means it's a county project. This is a county function. This is something that the county does. The county takes care of their buildings. The county pays for their people. The county does those things on a routine basis. That's what we do. This is our building. I can get there that we should be the one running this program.
And you're saying network upgrades is operational?
Network upgrades is operational. They're the ones that needs to go out to bid. They're the ones that's going to need to talk to the vendors and determine exactly what needs to be done. Not our IT department, not our MIS department.
Correct.
They need to be doing this. This is a project for them, not a county project. The county, we're going to go over there and we're going to look at the roof and we're going to put a roof on. I mean, we can do that, but this is going to be something that requires their intimate knowledge. They're working back and forth with their vendor that they choose, and I think that it's so specific to them that it's not a BOCC. To me, it's just not a BOCC project. It's something that's worthy of BOCC, funding, but we get into the issue of
That
their
muddies the
risk
waters between
assessment.
us and MIS, as well as what you're saying too.
Right, it does. And you don't even have a contract with, there's no MOU with MIS right
Not
now.
at present.
Right.
Correct.
So, and that makes it even more difficult
Absolutely.
to do something like this now.
And so your position is to take no action on 10079?
Yeah, I think 10079 is still, in my mind, we leave it approved. It's in the hands of the detention center, and they can utilize their subrecipient agreement to seek reimbursement due to their risk level. They can, whether it's phasing it or they, find other, sources of funding to be able to tackle this project, and then we would reimburse them for that expense.
Or we could move it and let the commissioners and BOCC determine.
I have no objection to advancing it and let them have this discussion.
Okay. I motion to advance and let the commissioners determine how they want to utilize the funds.
Well, okay, hang on, because advancing, we can put an agenda item, or I say we, our individual offices or the jail trust can put an agenda item on BOCC at any time.
Mhm.
And that would be advancing it onto their agenda. What we normally do with our advancement is we are making a recommendation that we do this. So is that what the motion and second is? Because I don't have a problem with it going to BOCC and BOCC considering it, but I can't vote that I'm recommending that BOCC do that, because I don't recommend that they do it. But I just want to make clear what you're wanting, because I don't want to vote no when people think that I'm not in favor of BOCC, hearing it and having a conversation, because I totally think they can at any time. I'm not in favor of us sending a recommendation for the network upgrades.
So my concern is, and I hear you in regards to what is building that, we're responsible as owners to repair, but they need those network upgrades, to operate, right? And they're necessary in regards to being able to operate on your own without MIS. Is that correct?
Correct.
And because of the deficit that they're currently facing, there isn't anyone here on behalf of the jail trust in order to talk to the budget, and if they even have those funds in order to move forward. And if we have the ability in order to help them fund that, my heart's to be able to help them move forward. I guess that's my concern is that we don't have anyone here discussing if they even have the funds in order to be able to pay in pieces,
No, I get that, but just because, it would be like any entity coming and say in our community portal piece, we have somebody that comes and wants X amount of money for a project, and it's a great project and we want to do it, but they don't, for whatever reason, they're assessed at a medium to a high risk. The county, I would not on any of them recommend, okay, let's go ahead and tackle that as the county and front fund it and pay for that for them, and then then we can reimburse through ARPA. I would never recommend that, and to me that is the exact same thing as we're talking about here. I understand the need. If it doesn't go through, you have a network that is operable, correct?
That's correct. It's not falling apart.
Right.
It is to the point it needs to be upgraded. I think the core switch, I believe, was installed around 12 years ago, which is beyond the ideal lifespan of that piece
Are
of
there
equipment.
security issues tied to the network?
Now, as far as keeping it up to date, it's as up to date as it can be. That equipment is technically not been decommissioned or end of life as far as the vendor goes, so they do still release security updates and all that. MIS is responsible for keeping that up to date. It's their equipment. I have no reason to believe they're not doing that. But now with all those considerations, there is an end of life date on that equipment, I believe in 2024.
Yeah.
So we still have some time.
So since we're voting on these individually, for ARPA funding.
And what we, if
What-
you could, I just had an idea.
Okay.
What we could look at, like you said, it's 2024. We can't just flip a switch and go for this. So maybe what we could do is leave this under their umbrella. And this is to give them the most amount of flexibility when they're designing their system as well. But we look at when we fund them through their general fund budget this next year, what we normally do is we give them 1 month at a time. We give them a 12th, a 12th, a 12th, a 12th until we get through the fiscal year. Maybe at the beginning of the year, now we'll need to talk to Christy and Micah to see how much we have available on day one, but maybe instead of giving them their just 1 month in July, maybe we front them 2 or 3 months at the very beginning, give them 2 or 3 months of their full year payment, and then they can use it, and then the next month they'll get a 12th and then a 12th. They just won't get, they won't get like if we did 3 months, if we gave them 3 months in the beginning, then the last 3 months of the year, they wouldn't get a check from us because they got
We
it
would
at
have
the
the
very
reimbursement.
beginning, but you would get the reimbursement
Right.
from this $1.8 million. So you can front fund it with your getting a little bit of your budget early. Would that work?
I would have no problem with that whatsoever.
And then that would leave this in their hands and they can manage it the way they see fit.
I
Mike
missed
is
the
shaking her
beginning
head, yes.
discussion. This is ARPA only money that you're talking about, the 1/12, 1/12, 1/12?
No, that's their general fund
That's what I
budget.
thought you were saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
so their issue is they don't have
I understand that part.
they don't have general fund money right now laying around to
To
be able
front.
to front fund it. But if we gave them more than a 12th at the beginning of the fiscal year in July, then they would have money to be able to front that because you're going to have
Be reimbursed.
exactly you'll have that extra
Right.
if we front
By the
fund
end of
you
the year,
2 or 3 months, and then by the end of the year you have your project done, and then you have your reimbursement of the 1.8 million from ARPA, and you're able to work within the confines of the subrecipient agreement, and you're in control of sending it out to bid, picking your vendor and what you want to do instead of having to follow all of the BOCC. Got it. Now
much
you'll
prefer
still you would prefer that?
Yes.
Okay. You'll still have to, since it's ARPA reimbursement, you'll need to get with our consultant to make sure that you're following the federal bidding, requirements and all of that. But you'll still have maximum flexibility.
So on behalf of the detention center, that's what you would prefer?
Yes, please.
Then I amend my motion.
And so so you're going to
I'll
move
amend
to
my-
advance that
Yeah, based off of,
recommendation to BOCC.
yeah, I'll reverse that based off of the detention center's desire to work that way in regards to their subrecipient agreement. Do we agree?
Second.
Okay.
I mean, Micah, do you have an issue with that in the beginning of July? Right. Yeah.
Sharon asked
And
me
if
today.
if worse comes to worse and that can't happen then in July, then we can revisit this and come in and look at taking the project over. But until we've exhausted that option, I think we should.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so I motion in order to move forward with keeping the 1.8 or $1,810,808 within the subrecipient agreement for network upgrades with advancing their budget so that way they can be reimbursed at the new fiscal year. Is that correct? Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
well, this board doesn't have anything to do with
Okay.
the budget,
That's
so
not budget.
I think it would,
So-
I don't think we need any action on the
'Cause it's already
10079 because it's already there. So if we don't take any action on it, it just stays there just like it
Okay.
was before.
Then I do not motion. And there's
Anything
no
else?
action on this item, and thank you, Jeff,
Thank you.
very much for hashing that out with us. Danielle, do you have anything to add?
No, sounds good.
Okay.
There is one more project. I think it might fall under the same agenda item, but I want to be sure. We're going to talk again about the Juvenile Bureau's request for their jail tracking system.
Before you get too far into there, and I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that it's clear that when we were talking about 10073, 7477, and 78, those were contingent. That was a contingent recommendation that the BOCC amends the lease agreement to allow us to do that. I just want to make sure that the record is clear on that.
Yeah, that would need to be done first.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan.
No problem. We'll come back to all of that. Okay. So this is something that was brought by Hannah at the last meeting, at the last P&G meeting. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us today. So we're going to present it on her behalf. It is the same concept as what she presented. This system is used in coordination with some of their already internal projects. And so what this is able to do is helps with like the kids scan bracelets and medication logging, and it helps the behavioral staff and medical staff talk together. It is an eligible use of funds. It is that initial $61,000 figure, but there is an ongoing cost for the software, and it would be $40,000 each year. So at the point that ARPA was no longer available, the county would have to be responsible for that. So it is something to be aware of.
I personally, I think that this is definitely something worth looking at, but I think this is worth looking at in their budget and not through ARPA, because that is a decently significant ongoing cost. And I don't want to get into a situation where we're doing front funding, getting this set up, and then if we don't have the money to continue on annually, I think we should look at this as maybe to be included in their annual budget moving forward.
I agree.
So I would make a motion to archive this item, not because it's not worthy, but.
And I'll second.
All right, I'm going to go back and give you a seizure. Sorry. So that takes care of.
Hang on, we didn't vote on that.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I don't have a button. No, ma'am.
That motion passes.
Perfect. All right. So that brings us back to the beginning of our presentation today. We've kind of bounced around a little bit. We've already talked about the detention center moving their projects to BOCC. So the next action item we are going to ask you guys about is closing the community engagement survey. It's been posted on the county's website for several months. We would recommend going ahead and closing that on Friday along with the application.
Sounds good to me.
All right. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's posted that the deadline is the 17th, and so that is the closing. At a later date, if there are additional funds, is there a possibility to reopen the portal, or would we retain those applications on a ratings schedule in order to possibly be able to fund organizations at a later date?
Yeah, we could do it however the board wanted to. If you wanted to only use the applicants that had already applied and met the initial deadline, we could review those that didn't receive funding in the next couple of months, or we can reopen. The application in its integrity will close, but we could always work with IT to reopen or populate if needed to.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that closed didn't mean done, like no additional asks at a later date. Thank you for that clarification.
That would also go for this input too.
Yeah.
We could always reopen that.
Exactly, and I can walk y'all through. We have a little bit of the input. As you can see, this is like our word blocking. Most of the needs in the community have been through mental health, or that is what people are identifying or perceiving as the need throughout the community. Most of the applications we've received so far from the community portal are social services related, so that's not particularly a surprise. Other things that are a clear thing that people are interested in is homelessness as well, and then harm reduction services. This was something we asked just in general, what are people feeling was one of their biggest challenges when recovering from the pandemic, and it ranges from all sorts of things. We've got emotional isolation and grief, and then financial concerns, as well as trying to find a new job or medical recovery. And then on top of that, we did ask the community, what do you think the county should be addressing? And this very much aligns with the word blocking we just saw. So you have your social services, your housing programs, and things like that in there as well. So we'll go ahead and close that on Friday, along with the application with the intent to reopen if necessary. A follow-up question regarding.
So this is an item that does not advance to the VOCC.
I don't know that it's
I don't think
necessary.
I'm not suggesting it is, it's just that it seems a little bit, yes, I'm just trying to follow the pattern and practice earlier when you were talking about what is required or not, or what we tend to advance, and that's a poor choice of words. But one of the things that I thought about asking is, what is the pattern and practice? My understanding of the pattern and practice of most of your work is that it starts at P&G and then goes up to VOC.
Sure, we take our
I don't know
direction.
what stops at P&G.
We take our direction from P&G. So when we stood up the community portal, originally we didn't have to work that up to BOCC to get it started. We take our direction from you guys, and if BOCC has changes or amendments, we obviously work with the commissioners as well. But if you, on an action item such as this, it doesn't have a dollar figure that has to run up through your own chambers, we have been able to move forward with the board's consensus.
I don't have an objection to that. I just haven't heard it. I haven't heard the parameters. So what I'm hearing you say right now, spend is the parameter versus administrative or administrative.
Typically the spend or like the subrecipient agreements always go to BOCC, things of an escalation level in that way that require a secondary level of authorization.
Just some of the lower, some of the lower to medium level administrative, just the management piece of it. This board has done some of that stuff, but the higher level decisions, especially funding, but approving subrecipient agreements, well, because they're contracts.
Right. So it's just pattern and practice. We don't have any specific.
Right.
No, there's no
guidelines.
written
Okay.
guidelines.
I have no objection.
That's a good.
17th.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So basically, process.
Yeah, no problem. And if we need to change that later, we can adjust as well. Building off of the community portal closure, when we get to a place of being prepared to award funds, and we're not there yet, we haven't even given you guys a review of the applicants, but each applicant will likely need a subrecipient agreement based on what their ask is, and that does move through the chambers. We'll give it to P&G first, and then it works its way to BOCC. And in order to move those to the DA's office in the fastest method, we wanted to ask if there was anyone on this specific board that wanted to be in charge of kind of making sure that those get passed through, because we have to have the legal review of them done. So it would really just be us saying, here's the agreement, it's been drafted, will you please get it to the DA's office and let us know if there's any concerns. And think it might make sense through the chair's office, but that is for you guys to decide.
I'd be happy.
I mean, that's kind of what the process has been so far.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd be happy to do so.
Perfect.
If that's okay with you.
Now, I do have a question. I know you and your folks are going to review those applications for compliance with the Treasury guidelines. Are you also, with that initial look, going to delineate which of those are subrecipients versus what's the other term?
Yeah, grantees.
Grantees.
Yes. We will do the initial eligibility assessment, the risk assessment. So are they low, medium, or high? Will they be a subrecipient or a grantee? Okay. And then we're likely going to categorize them. If it's all infrastructure projects, these are your 5 infrastructure, here are your 7 social services, kind of put them in buckets in that way as well.
Okay.
And then we can assess community impact based on those categories, because an infrastructure impact would be different than a social services impact.
And you guys are willing and able to help us on that analysis as well once we get there.
Absolutely.
So once the the funds are awarded in those cases, what is the process that you have done in the past in regards to accountability and audit for those nonprofit or small businesses? For follow-up to make sure that those funds are allocated and used appropriately?
Right.
What is their expectations?
That is why we, on the front side, that's why the portal application is so long. We ask the risk assessment questions on the front side versus asking them later, like, oh, we want to give these people funds, and then find out that they don't have good internal structure. So based on the structures that already exist within these organizations, if they're a medium or high, it will only be reimbursement. That's something we've discussed. If it's a low, then they will use their internal systems. We're not going to ask them to reinvent the wheel, but they will have to report those things to us. And there is we will have regular reporting because we will have to have it all go into the quarterly report as well.
Mm-hmm.
So any of the contracts that go into place, we will have oversight on like reviewing and making sure the subrecipient agreements are all good to go as well. And then on top of that, we will ask them to get their data to us. If we have a quarterly report that's due August 31st, they needed to get it to us on August 1st. And we will work through those and make sure it's submitted to Treasury properly.
So quarterly reporting for those that are recipients of the ARPA funding. I think
And
that's
you- and-
important for those to know.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll do spot checks, like, just random spot checks on the stuff just to make sure.
Right. Yeah, and so I'll kind of run through, that gets us into kind of our look ahead. And some of this is, host compliance and trainings for the subrecipients, where we have that kind of slotted for June. It could be earlier, it could be a little later, depending on how we're able to get the funds out the door. But absolutely is on the agenda and on our list of things to be proactive about. That is all of our action items. For the sake of time, I know people have been here for a while. I can run through this quickly, or we can just send this to you guys. It's just kind of letting you know what we've done this past month, what we're looking at doing next month, and then a larger overview.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about your look ahead, especially since the next item is talking about your continued services.
Sure. So in March, which we are currently in, we are, intaking the proposals as they're coming in, and then we will continue with the review and triage process into April. And then the quarterly report also gets submitted in April. That obviously will not include anyone in the community at this time. Those are just the county projects that have a PO at this moment. Moving into April/May, we'll have the presentation to the board for the community proposals. We're anticipating that being at the next P&G meeting, unless we get 100 applications between now and Friday. Not anticipating that, but did want to have a contingency in case something like that were to occur. But otherwise anticipating having that prepared for April, and then going through and awarding the community projects. And so those timelines may change a little bit. We have the award of community projects in June, but that really could happen in April or May. This is just a general overview of what we're seeing in the next steps forward, but it's also fluid in the way that we're able to work and move forward with the board. And then once those community projects are assigned, we will do the compliance trainings and work with the subrecipient so they understand all of the requirements and structure. And then in July, we will have to update the recovery plan, and that will be submitted as well. Don't anticipate that the community will have spent likely at that point in time to report on, but if they do, we'll make sure to include them as well. And then ongoing, these are things we do all the time, checking reimbursement files, checking the process of things, making sure projects are moving along, monitoring for unused funds or funds that were used in an inappropriate manner, and then also making sure that there's a grant closeout procedure with our subrecipients. They will get like a closeout letter when they've expended all of their funds that just kind of denotes that the program has now run its course.
4 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA consultation and management services project status report. Is that your status report? Okay.
Motion to receive.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Don't have any others, yeah. You'll have to vote for me.
Anything else to add?
No, we don't have any other action items, and we can share this with you guys. Just letting you know, we've been working through with community organizations as they've had questions, taking one-on-one meetings, meeting with county departments to help with their written justifications and things like that as well. And we'll want to meet with the owner's rep moving forward and understand their project timelines and make sure that they have contacts with us as well. And then again, this just touches on our ongoing reports and things like that.
So number 5 and 6 is the discussion for proposed and approved. Do we need to move on to those next items?
We have no other projects. These were all discussed in individual agenda items.
So no action needed on those.
And that takes us home.
Do we need a motion to receive 5 and 6? Okay, so I'll motion to receive 5 and 6 for the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any citizen that have signed up to visit today? I don't see any. Do we have any board comments?
None.
Thank you for all your time today to vet through these. We really appreciate everyone's comments and hard work. Do you have anything, Cody?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any new business?
None of business.
No new business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.